From crazy clowns to people who literally carve the number of people they've killed into their skin, the Batman universe is home to some interesting characters. But no matter how interesting these characters are, there is always a reason they do what they do. So let's talk about some of those reasons. First up, we have Edward Nygma, aka the Riddler. Quite possibly the most intelligent of all of the Batman villains, the smartness of which the Riddler is known for ends up to be ultimately his downfall. He comes up with these grand and elaborate schemes that would be flawless for even the most experienced detective, but ruins the flawlessness because of his overwhelming need to always leave behind a clue specifically meant for his pursuers. This need for sameness throughout his entire criminal career is a very big sign that Edward Nygma has obsessive-compulsive disorder. More commonly referred to as OCD, obsessive-compulsive disorder is an anxiety disorder in which people have unwanted and repeated thoughts, sensations, feelings, or behaviors that make them feel driven to do something. So essentially, the Riddler's OCD drives him to give away the answer to all of his traps, which ultimately doesn't really make them traps. The Riddler is essentially the one dude that plays Uno with you that always loses because he leaves his cards on the table, but then wonders why he loses by leaving his cards on the table. The only thing holding Nygma back can be solved with a few years of therapy and some medication, but unfortunately for him, he doesn't stay in Arkham long enough to receive said therapy and medication. Who knows, maybe he's just afraid some monster is gonna come out of the sewer again. Which brings us to our next topic. Fear. Bullied as a kid, Jonathan Crane, aka the Scarecrow, turned to science to get his revenge. Over the years, he developed a fear toxin which caused his victims to be constantly tortured by incessant hallucinations of their worst fear. In which case, teachers of freshmen probably wouldn't be affected by the fear toxin, considering teaching a room full of freshmen the entire day is already pretty much the worst fear you can possibly have. But what may seem as a simple quest for revenge might actually prove to be a little more than that. The fact that he constantly plagues people's minds with unwanted thoughts might point to the fact that Jonathan Crane has antisocial personality disorder. Antisocial personality disorder is a condition in which a person has a long-term pattern of manipulating, exploiting, or violating the rights of others. And if seeing your worst nightmare everywhere you look isn't a violation of rights, I don't know what is. Now, if Jonathan Crane could stay in Arkham Asylum long enough, he could probably overcome his antisocial personality disorder in a similar fashion that Riddler could overcome his OCD, with some years of therapy and medication. But then again, walking around with a burlap sack over your head isn't exactly the most inviting face to have when you're in front of a therapist. But neither is having half of your face completely rotted off. Which brings me to my next topic. Harvey Dent. More commonly known as Two-Face, Harvey Dent started off as a lawyer until one fateful day someone threw acid into exactly half of his face, leaving it completely disfigured and ugly and gross, and no one likes him. I mean, like, he is not getting married anytime soon, you know? Just saying. I don't think there are any online dating sites for people with exactly half of a face, you know. Although I wouldn't be surprised. Being a crime lord, Two-Face's crimes aren't very different from the typical mobster, aside from the fact he decides everything using two sides of a coin. The undamaged side of the coin represents the good action, whereas the other side of the coin, the scratched side, represents the evil action. In fact, there have been occasions where the simple coin flip decided that he worked with the Batman instead of against him. This constant switching between his good and his evil side is very reminiscent of someone who has multiple personality disorder. Multiple personality disorder is a rare dissociative disorder in which two or more personalities with distinct memories and behavior patterns exist in one individual. And no, just because your sibling loves you when you play Smash Brothers with them, but then hates you when you beat them in Smash Brothers, does not mean that they have multiple personality disorder necessarily. Having to appeal to the personality that his coin tells him to appeal to makes it very hard for Harvey to make his own decisions. This makes him very unpredictable and an admirable foe for the Caped Crusader. But an even more admirable and more interesting foe to the Caped Crusader is probably one of the most well-known villains in pop culture today. This villain being, of course, the Joker, aka no one really knows. Even though the true origin story of the Joker is unknown, the most widely accepted one is told in the amazing graphic novel The Killing Joke by Alan Moore. This graphic novel Joker backstory extravaganza tells the sad tale of a failed comedian and an upcoming father who decides to make a deal with two mobsters to rob a chemical plant in order to raise his family. The deal turns sour, however, when the Batman shows up, causes the man to fall into a vat of acid, disfiguring his skin and hair, and turns him into the villain we all love to hate. His horrible life causes the Joker to become a sadistic man who only really commits crimes to cause havoc. How does one crappy day change a failed comedian into a murderer of hundreds of thousands? Well, post-traumatic stress disorder. PTSD is a condition of persistent mental and emotional stress occurring after injury or severe psychological shock. Now, I could go into detail and explain how the Joker's PTSD affects him, but honestly, I think he explains it the best himself. In The Killing Joke, the Joker explains madness is the emergency exit. You can just step outside and close the doors on all those dreadful things that happened. You can lock them all away. Forever. So I guess I should take back my earlier statement of the Joker just commits crimes for the sake of causing havoc, because he really commits crimes to escape his awful past. The Joker's psychotic death traps and ceaseless, senseless murder are actually just a way for him to forget about everything bad that's happened and to cope with the terrible life that he has to live now. But despite everything he's gone through, he isn't specifically mad at Batman. In fact, Batman's his friend. You see, Batman made him realize he's got nothing left to lose. He can do anything just for the fun of doing something, even if it's sick and twisted and demented. And he thanks Batman for it. He creates this whole new way of thinking that can't really be described by a diagnosis. It's just who the Joker is. And that's why the Joker's as iconic and popular as he is, because unlike all of the other villains, the Joker likes Batman. That being said, I don't think him and the Batman are going to be best buds anytime soon, considering the Joker's killed literally thousands of people. Everyone loves a good villain, and the Batman universe definitely has no shortage of them. But next time you read a comic, stop and think. Why does this person do what they do? What made them into the person they are today? And is there any chance that they could change? Because then you'll start realizing maybe those crazy people aren't as crazy as we originally thought. Will Batman find any friends? Will Robin stop being such a whiny idiot? Find out next time. Same bat channel.